So I just wanted to do a short video on some of the negative side effects that I've experienced with my anxiety and panic disorder over the years that are a little less talked about, I think, as far as what people with these conditions are really experiencing. And this is my personal experience. Your experience may be much different, and that's fine. But one of the first things, I've already spoken about it in some of my other videos, was weight gain. And the reason why I gained weight with my anxiety and my panic disorder is because it was twofold. For one thing, I wasn't able to exercise. I wasn't able to exercise because anytime I elevated my heart rate, I would feel like I was gonna have a panic attack. And having pushed through this a couple times, I did actually have panic attacks. So I became very, very reticent to exercise. Then, in addition to this, when I was really bad and untreated, I also ate to self-soothe. I ate to try to feel a little more normal. And this was not a good solution, obviously. And about the first 2 years that I was untreated, I put on about 100 pounds. So a lot of people wouldn't think that weight gain would be a big symptom or a big effect from anxiety or panic. But if you have the symptoms that I had, I would bet that a lot of people out there have experienced weight gain when they fall victim to these mental health conditions. Another thing that people may not think of and that's memory loss. I was still in my early 30s, those first couple of years that I was untreated. And so that's too early for age to be a factor. And sure enough, I will tell you that I very much noticed where I wasn't as sharp, where I couldn't remember things as well. And I actually had been somebody who had a very good memory. That was one of my strengths prior to this. So when it was affected, it was very obvious. In particular, names of actors, actresses, movies, things like that normally I would just rattle off. I couldn't think of. I couldn't even begin to formulate or to come up with the answers to things like that. My memory was failing. And this is actually something that they've done studies on, and they have found that memory loss actually can be permanent from stress. So I feel like I'm very fortunate because once I did get effectively treated, I feel like I've gotten a lot of it back. Now, am I as sharp as I was in my 20s as far as my memory goes? No, but I think some of that's to be expected with, battling this condition for a couple of decades combined with age. I still am vastly better than I was when I had been untreated and was experiencing some memory loss. But a very scary symptom. And you're already anxious, right? You're already having panic attacks. And then on top of it, you can't remember things that you didn't even have to try to remember before. So this doesn't sound like this huge scary symptom, but it really is. That you want to have your faculties when you feel like your faculties are being tested. So that leads right into my next thing that I noticed, and that was cognitive impairment. And I know that a lot of people who suffer these mental health conditions probably can relate to the cognitive impairment that you experience when you take benzodiazepines or some of these other medications that definitely blunt people intellectually. At least that was my experience. I noticed that I wasn't as sharp when I took these medications. But I wasn't taking any medication. And I remember when I was trying to do something that really, took some brain power, but not an inordinate amount, and I just couldn't do it. And I remember this, and it was very frustrating. I didn't have the mental energy or acuity to do something that would have been fairly easy for me to do before I had developed anxiety and panic disorder. And I would notice this just in my ability, those things that you have to think deeply on. I think a lot of us with these conditions, we're really deep thinkers, we're really analytical. We dig into things, we like solving things, and that was beyond me. After a couple of years untreated, I was a shell of myself when it came to my intellectual aptitude. So that's another thing I think that it kind of goes right along with the memory, but people don't realize that that is what happens when these conditions are untreated. When you just try to, white knuckle it and you're not, you don't want to admit to anybody you have an issue. You certainly don't want to go to a mental health professional, what an admission of weakness. And this is what happens. And it's not funny. It's not fun. And, it can ruin your life. So, as far as other symptoms that people don't talk about a lot, emotional exhaustion. So, maybe you've watched a crime show or an interrogation show where they have the perpetrator and he knows he's caught, and they go in to interrogate him and he's sleeping on the floor. Just absolute nervous system shutdown. Well, when you have these conditions, whether it's anxiety disorder or panic disorder, untreated, you will feel this way over nothing. And it will completely disable you from being able to engage with your significant other, with your children. You will just be shut down. And then maybe a conversation is going to be something you need to be able to emotionally invest in. And you can't. You have a very, very small amount, finite amount of emotional energy that you can invest before you just shut down. Your nervous system just shuts you down. And I remember feeling this way many times when my wife just wanted to talk about normal things, daily, what's going on with the family, she wasn't talking about, solving the world's problems or some deep, dark emotional secret. And I just didn't have the emotional energy to give to it. A lot of the time I would have to tap out. And so that's another side effect, or one that people don't think of, that you have from untreated anxiety and panic disorder. And then finally, another big thing that happens when you have these mental health conditions is you have very poor impulse control and you become a very bad decision maker. And I would argue that a lot of this is because you're not going to be sleeping very well. If these are untreated, if you have full-blown anxiety, panic disorder, OCD, any of these anxiety spectrum conditions, it will affect your sleep, and the condition also will inhibit sleeping, and then you will not be able, when you're not sleeping, your impulse control is going to be bad and your decision making is going to be bad. And I can remember that obviously the lack of impulse control led into some of the weight gain and some of the decisions I made, like even with employment, some of the things that I was doing during that time with job shifts that I was working and the hours I was working, there were decisions that were bad decisions. And I firmly believe it was because, of the condition that I was making such bad decisions. You end up grasping for straws. you want to figure out a way you can provide for your family and get through this darkness that you're going through with this mental health issue. And it's very difficult. But yes, impulse control. And the impulse control also would affect my temper. And it's not that I don't have a temper. I would say I do have quite a temper, but I'm also in pretty good control of my temper. And when I was untreated with my anxiety and panic disorder, I was not in control of my temper. And you could see it both at work and with my family. And what I noticed, I remember there was a few times where I left work because I felt as though I was going to lose my temper and thus end up losing my employment. So I just left. These things snowball, and stress has real long-term effects, especially if it's untreated. So, how do you deal with these? Just real brief, that's not what this video is about, and I don't want it to be long. First, get treatment from a mental health professional. If you're a man, put your pride aside. Don't prolong getting treatment because it's not going to get better until you get treated. This may include pharmaceutical intervention, cognitive behavioral therapy. Also, the other big three that I always mention: get your sleep, quantity and quality, exercise, and your diet. Make sure it's balanced. You're running it, it's not running you. Those three things, they don't sound like mountain movers, but they really are when it comes to mental health. And then if you do these things, you get treatment, then a lot of these effects, I noticed when I got treatment for these, got 60-70% better within about 6 weeks. And then you can start putting in the work, start hopefully rebuilding the things that the mental health condition has inhibited you from for a while. So anyways, I didn't want to make a long video. I just want to let everybody know who's commented, liked, subscribed. Thank you so much. I really appreciate it. I really feel like this channel can do some good. It can educate people who have these mental health conditions, but also people who are living with people who have these mental health conditions. Anyways, thank you guys so much, and until my next video, take care.